I count it a real privilege to speak a few words about Youth for Christ in Sri Lanka. YFC came when I was almost a young man, maybe about 18 or so. And I think it was the time when YFC was really coming into Sri Lanka. I now can't remember all the names of the people, but it was a thing that was started to assist the churches in trying to win the youth, because at that time there was no organization called YFC here. But I remember names like Dr. Alfred Coston. Then I remember names like Rev. Cole and many other foreigners from the Baptist Church, the Methodist Church, even the Anglican. There was a person who was involved. And what they had were rallies, in churches. And these men would direct their message mainly to the youth, because their whole aim was to win youth for Christ. And at that time, we did not have much in Sri Lanka to cater like the other organizations. Today, they are doing a tremendous work amongst the youth. But when YFC came, it had a purpose and a time. I remember that my first touch came to me from YFC when I was a young man, frustrated and almost giving up hope of living. And I came to the service at the YMCA hall, and it was a time when the evangelist called Hubert Mitchell and his father was conducting. That time, since they didn't have organization, the churches got together and brought the people. And in that service, God really spoke to me, because I was so frustrated. I was about to even end my life as a young lad, but God spoke to me. I still remember Hubert Mitchell preaching, and after that he gave an altar call, and I went to the altar and many of the young people, and he handed me to his father, A.E. Mitchell, and he very lovingly, tenderly led me to the Lord. That experience of mine was the foundation for my entire life and ministry, because I am not criticizing, but I don't believe today people go deep down into the roots of salvation. When he explained to me, I talked to him, and he said, God can transform your life completely. Today we think only of the transformation, but we don't talk about the regeneration. I was made a new species that very night, and I had been a black sheep. I had been away from home, and in those years, you don't leave home. But today it is 18 and out in most countries. But even if you're more than 36, we still remain with our parents. But I had left home because I was so disgusted. But when I got saved that night, my first desire was to go home. We lived in Markevita, a village close to Jayala, and my father was also a Christian minister, and he lived in this village. So I went home that night, very late in the night, and I had to walk about 4 miles to get home from Jayala. And when I tapped at the door, we had no electricity those days. There was an Aladdin lamp. I saw somebody through the glass pane lighting that lamp. but I was still in the darkness. And then I heard the voice of my mother saying, "Colton, have you come back?" I hugged my mother. I said, "How do you know after so many months that I was behind the door?" She said, "Son, don't you know that we have a prayer hearing and a prayer answering God? Your father and I told God, don't send old Colton through those doors again. When you are sending, send a new Colton home." I firmly believe, even today, someone was asking me from America a question, that America is really more heathen than most of the countries which were called heathen. They even have legally given permission for the same sex people to get married. And this lady was asking me, how can we save our children? I said, your children cannot be saved by the state, nor by the government, nor can your people be saved through the institution. God made a father and a mother. The Bible says, bring up a child in the way he should go. It is there we plant the seed. So I remember that day when I got home and how I was just a lad of 16 years or little more. And when I asked forgiveness from my father, all what I said was, I want to go and tell every young man and every young woman that God can do a miracle and transform their lives. Now I mustn't go on with my testimony, but I must tell you, it impacted me, and I decided, not that I knew anything, the following morning I started. Moment I woke up after many months, I heard the sound of a bicycle bell, and it was the paper boy. Then the baker came with the bread, and the vegetable woman and the fish man. I got these 4 people. I would not let them go. I told them, if you slip out of my hand, you'll go to hell. And I led them to the Lord. You know, this is something that has disturbed me. Today people say they are saved. And I ask, how many souls have you brought into the kingdom? They scratch their heads. I couldn't help but tell. And I became an evangelist the following morning. Last night I was born again. Following morning I was an evangelist. So this has been a little puzzle to me. How can people lie dormant and not know? So thank God for Youth for Christ and the burning zeal of presenting the gospel that made me to turn around and to come to God. Now, as there was no organization called Youth for Christ, the churches, the Baptists, the Methodists, the Assemblies of God, all these churches gave a full support to them. And they had rallies or meetings in most of these churches. And at that time, there were very fervent Christians. I know of Hallock, Elfich Fernando, and a few others. How they got saved, and then they were very, very dedicated to the cause. They would go to the YMCA and talk to people. They started a luncheon meeting, and then they would go to the street corners and have open air services. And I remember how they would come from office. They used to go to the Colombo Gospel Tabernacle, get onto that little balcony and pray the whole night. And there was really something thrilling about what Youth for Christ did then. Because I'm saying then I am now old and I don't know what's happening now, but thank God for what they are doing. It had an impact. You know, it had not only a message, it was not only an organization, it was not involved at that time in social work, but it had a tremendous desire to save the youth and to put them on the right track. So that's why the churches got very interested. The churches gave their full support in opening their churches, even financing some of the rallies, and in helping in every way possible. And then we thank God that Youth for Christ got organized, and some of the pioneers are still alive, I think. And I think Sam Sherrod and a few others, I don't remember names now, it's very difficult, but they gave birth. And we thank God for what Youth for Christ has done, is doing, and what it will do. Of course, during my period of time, materialism was not so powerful. Today, people are wrapped around material things. I think today materialism is very strong and people are attracted. And those days, people were more conscious. Even the heathens, or non-Christians, they were concerned about God. But today, more people are concerned about his money making and prestige, honor, rising up in the ladder of success. Even the gospel has turned that way. People preach more on prosperity than the cross of Christ. So I think Youth for Christ was birthed for this cause, and I trust in the future Youth for Christ would be the mission that will revive and bring forth the plan of God's salvation to all mankind. May the Lord bless Youth for Christ, and may it grow, and may it become a wonderful force to win the youth and to prepare them to become ministers of the gospel.